3, 2.
And welcome everyone to the Real Leaders podcast with keys from keynote speakers at the Agents of Change Summit. I'm your host, Kevin Edwards. Joining me today is Sherry Emery, a senior fellow and director of social data collection, NORC, at the University of Chicago. Sherry, thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And go Maroons.
Yes, go Maroons.
So what brings you, Sherry, to the Agents of Change Summit?
Well, it's an interesting question, actually, because I do research. I don't plan interventions or actually do the campaigns. But what the work that my team does is basic research that can inform campaign, like messaging and strategy, as well as do the evaluation. So what we do kind of bookends the interventions and the things that people are doing to make behavior change.
Okay, is there a certain correlation maybe between physical activity or a type of behavior change to cause someone to quit vaping or quit their current pattern that's destructive?
Oh, that's a great question.
From your
Don't know the answer to that.
How do you work with
we work?
campaign messaging?
So we work to understand what people and brands and influencers are saying on social media about that behavior.
Okay.
And what makes it different from like brand listening. Like, I think there's a lot of products and companies out there that like track the brand and say, you know, everybody loves Delta Airlines, everybody hates Delta Airlines, right? That's pretty easy, but when you're talking about trying to understand behavior change and the things that affect behavior change on social media, you really need to expand the vocabulary because people don't talk about the campaigns using the campaign language typically. So like smoking cessation is something that the Tips from Former Smokers campaign tries to promote, but nobody talks about, you know, real people don't talk about smoking cessation, and real people didn't talk about like the CDC's anti-smoking ads. They talked about those commercials with the lady in the hole in her throat. So in order to be able to detect the signal about the campaign, we really have to know a lot about the campaign itself and a lot about the behavior that we're trying to understand.
So let's take this smoking example, just to stick on this.
Sure.
What type of age groups are you working with, or do you see it going from middle schoolers all throughout the adult life?
You know, it varies by product type.
Okay.
So there's different groups that tend to use different products more or less. So when we're talking about adult tobacco users, many of them are still conventional cigarette users. There are vapors that are very passionate about vaping. And then you've got like the new nicotine users that tend to be like the middle schoolers and high school users that often are vaping. But I think a big overlooked part of tobacco use and youth tobacco use is these flavored little cigars and cigarillos like Swishers and Backwoods and stuff that kids don't even like recognize them as tobacco products. But
what surprised you most maybe about all this research? I'm sure something has to jump out at you in terms of how old they are or the flavors or what they're doing.
What surprises me the most is how much tobacco industry marketing is going on social media and how extremely sophisticated it is. So it's really challenging to detect the marketing if you think of like traditional advertising, and they're so good at it that it's just astounding.
Yeah, with so much money invested into tobacco industry, like there's going to take a lot of leadership to encourage people, if they want to lead a healthy lifestyle, to not partake in this. What type of leadership is this going to take, and what do you define as a real leader?
Well, I think it's going to take leadership that has a thorough understanding of what the industry is doing in order to be able to create effective messaging and effective policies that really aren't trailing the industry, but are anticipating the industry and meeting them where they're at.
Okay.
As far as kind of generally what I think good leadership is, I think it's a combination of leading from behind and actually like getting out front and leading. So, you know, in my experience, there's a lot of listening, there's a lot of like waiting to make decisions, but I think that there's what's required in real leadership is knowing when to just say, okay, now we're going to do something.
Right. Well, Sherry, I'm glad we were able to listen to you today. For Sherry Emery, I'm Kevin Edwards, asking you to go out there and always, folks, keep it real. Make sure I appreciate you.
Great. Thank you.
All right. All right, folks, and thanks for watching this episode of the Real Leaders Podcast. If you want to learn more for leaders like this interview and you just can't get enough, go online to real-leaders.com/subscribe and get your first magazine for free using coupon code podcast25. That's podcast25, getting your first magazine for free on a 1-year subscription. See you there.